The body count started at 2. That was 6 months ago when a coolant line burst in the lower deck and killed petty officers Ade and Nur before anyone could reach them. There was no funeral. There was no room for one. Dara said their names into the ship log, noted their service years, and closed the file. That was all the Carrion Cross could afford. The ship had been running in the dark for 1,427 days. No transponder, no active heat signature, no radio, just a hollowed-out destroyer moving through empty space on recycled air and careful math, staying in the cold pockets between star systems where no conclave sensor array bothered to look. The crew ate once every 8 hours. They spoke in low voices even when it made no practical difference, because silence had become a habit and habits kept people alive. Rowe was at his station when the transmission fragment came through. He had been sorting intercepted conclave data packets for 3 hours, filtering noise from actual content, which was tedious work and usually produced nothing useful. This time was different. He read it twice. Then he walked to the back of the bridge where Dara was rechecking the fuel calculations she had already checked twice that morning. He handed her the data pad without a word. The fragment was partial, encrypted at the edges, but the core was readable. The Conclave's Veth corridor fleet was moving, 47 ships pulling out of their holding positions and forming a travel column. Destination tagged in Conclave logistics shorthand. Sector 9 residual population nodes. That was what the Conclave called the 3 surviving human colonies. Residual population nodes. Like they were leftover debris from something already cleaned up. Dara read it twice, the same as Rowe had. The 3 colonies had been there for 11 years, surviving on reduced power and strict rationing, sending distress signals into a silence they knew was permanent. The Conclave had ignored them because they were small. 3 stations, maybe 40,000 people total, not a military threat, not worth the fuel to deal with. But something had changed, and now 47 ships were moving, and the destination was not ambiguous. She handed the pad back. "Get Bavo and Rin up here." Bavo arrived smelling like engine grease, which was normal. Rin, the ship's navigation officer, arrived with a half-eaten ration bar in her hand, which was also normal. Rowe put the fragment on the main display. Nobody spoke for a moment. 47 ships, Bavo said. Yes, Dara said. Against 3 stations that don't have weapons. Yes. Bavo looked at the display for another few seconds. How long until they reached the first colony? 14 days at standard conclave travel speed, Rin said. 11 if they push. Dara pulled up the star map. The Veth corridor was a stretch of open space the conclave used as a transit lane, wide enough for a full fleet column and well patrolled on both sides. The Carrion Cross was currently sitting 8 hours outside of it. Not inside. Outside. Safe. "We have 2 options," she said. "We run. We go deeper out, stay dark, and the colonies go the way the homeworld shipyards went." She paused. "Or we go in." Nobody said anything right away, which was its own kind of answer. "If we go in," Bavo said slowly, "we burn the cloak." "We burn the cloak," Dara agreed. "No more hiding after that. Whatever happens, happens in the open." Rowe looked at the map. 47 ships and us. 47 ships that don't know what we've been doing for 4 years, Rin said. It was the first time she had spoken since reading the fragment, and she did not look up when she said it. She was still looking at the display. "They think we're dead or gone. That's not the same thing as being ready for us." Dara gave them time. Not long, maybe 2 minutes, because 2 minutes was all they had to spend on uncertainty. Then she looked around the room. Bavo nodded first, then Rin, then Rowe. No speeches. No long discussion about sacrifice or odds. Just 4 tired people in a ship that smelled like recycled air and old metal, deciding that they had not spent 11 years in the dark to watch the last 40,000 humans get erased from a safe distance. "Power up the drive," Dara said, "and get me a full read on Bavo's weapon systems. I want numbers, not estimates." Bavo was already moving toward the door. "I'll have them in an hour." "You have 40 minutes. He didn't argue. He never argued about time anymore. None of them did. Rowe began composing the internal broadcast to the crew. Short, factual, no extra words. The Carrion Cross was changing course. Destination the Veth Corridor. Estimated arrival 9 hours. All stations to begin pre-operation checks. That was it. The crew would understand. They had been waiting for something like this for a long time, not hopping for it, not wanting it exactly, but expecting it the way you expect a storm when the air has been too still for too long. Dara sat back down at her station. She pulled up the fuel calculations a third time, not because they had changed, but because she needed something to do with her hands while she thought. 9 hours was enough time to run through every scenario she could think of. She had learned, over 1,427 days, that thinking through scenarios was not the same as being ready for them, but it was better than not thinking at all. Outside the ship, the stars did not move. They never did from this distance. The Conclave fleet was out there somewhere, already forming up, already pointed toward the colonies, already certain that there was nothing left in the dark worth worrying about. That certainty was the only weapon Dara needed. 4 years before the Carrion Cross turned toward the Veth Corridor, it found a dead thing floating in a debris field past the edge of Conclave-charted space. The dead thing was a fabrication station, pre-war, automated, built by a human mining consortium that had gone bankrupt before the station ever processed a single ore load. Nobody had claimed it. Nobody had gone back for it. It had been drifting in the same slow elliptical orbit for decades, power cells at 3%, hull integrity at 60%, every system hibernating and waiting for an activation code that never came. Bavo sent the activation code from a shuttle 2 kilometers out, half expecting nothing to happen. The station lights came on, all of them. He sat in the shuttle and stared at it for a long time. Then he called Dara on the comm and said, "You should come see this." That was the last time, for a while, that anyone on the Carrion Cross said anything that wasn't strictly necessary. They were too busy. The first year was repairs. The fabrication station had been asleep for decades, and sleeping machines collect problems the same way sleeping people collect bad dreams. 17 of the 40 processing arms were seized. The power distribution network had fused in 3 places. The raw material hoppers were full of ice and old mineral dust, not ore, not useful, but the hoppers themselves were intact. The crew gutted the broken arms, used the components to fix the others, and by the end of month 11, 22 arms were operational and producing basic metal stock. The second year was design. Bavo and 2 engineers named Wohl and Priya locked themselves in the station's design bay for 6 months and built weapon systems that the Conclave had never thought to defend against. Not because the technology was exotic, because it was based on a simple, brutal observation. The Conclave built their shields to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles coming from outside. They had never seriously considered an attack from inside their shields, because nothing had ever gotten inside their shields. So Bavo built something that could. He called them phase-slip charges. They were not missiles. They were not beams. They were small, dense packages of compressed gravitational distortion that could be tuned to the specific frequency of a conclave shield harmonic and slip through it the same way water slips through a crack in stone. Once inside the shield, they detonated at the hull. No defense worked against them. There was nothing to defend against because the charge was already inside before any system could react. He told Dara about them on a Tuesday, which was only a Tuesday because the crew had kept an internal calendar for sanity reasons. She read the specifications twice. Then she asked how many they could build. Bavo said 300 if they pushed. She said push. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Sen of the Avari Conclave High Fleet was receiving quarterly reports on the human situation. The reports were short. They were short because there was very little to report. Human-occupied space had been largely pacified. The homeworld shipyards were gone. The major colony networks were gone. 3 small stations remained in the Veth corridor periphery, too small to matter, too isolated to threaten anything. The AI that compiled the reports categorized them under residual non-threat entities and filed them in a subfolder that Sen's staff checked approximately every 90 days. Sen had not personally read a human report in 2 years. He had other concerns. The Avari were managing disputes with the Orin Collective over mining rights in the Deln sector, and there were political tensions between the High Council's northern faction and the trade bloc that had been simmering for 18 months. Humans were simply not on the list of things that required his attention. They were finished. The math said so. A species without shipyards, without supply lines, without a navy, does not come back. He had studied enough history to be certain of this. The certainty was comfortable. Comfortable things are easy not to question. Back at the fabrication station, the 3rd year was production and the 4th year was testing. Bavo took 3 phase slip charges out to a decommissioned conclave relay station they had found drifting in the same debris field. The relay station still had its shields active. He fired 1 charge at it from 5 kilometers. The charge slipped through the shield. It detonated against the relay station's hull. The explosion punched a 3-meter hole through reinforced plating. Wohl, watching from the shuttle next to Bavo, said quietly, "That is not supposed to be possible." Bavo said, "I know." They sat there for a moment. The relay station was venting atmosphere from the hole, a thin white cloud spreading into the black. Nobody was aboard it. Nobody got hurt. It was just a test, but both of them understood what they were looking at. The Carrion Cross spent the next 7 years using those weapons on exactly the things the Conclave never noticed losing. Unmanned relay stations, automated supply depots, logistics processing nodes, small things, isolated things, nothing dramatic enough to trigger an investigation. Just a slow, invisible erosion of the Conclave's ability to sustain a long campaign in the outer sectors, chipping away one small installation at a time, so quiet that no analyst ever connected the losses into a pattern. Until now, none of it had been needed for what it was actually built for. Now Dara was 9 hours from the Veth corridor, and Bavo had 300 phase slip charges in the hold, and the Conclave fleet had no idea any of it existed. That was the difference between being broken and being patient. Humanity had learned the difference the hard way. The sensor officer aboard the Varath Sovereign noticed it first, and only because she had been awake for 6 hours running routine sweep diagnostics on the fleet column's perimeter, and had nothing else to do but watch the screens carefully. One moment empty space, clean, clear, nothing but stars. The next moment a ship. Not appearing from FTL. No entry flash, no gravity wave, no heat bloom. Just suddenly there, 3 kilometers off the port side of the flagship, as if it had always been there and the universe had simply forgotten to render it until now. She blinked at the display. The ship's profile was unfamiliar in shape, but the hull classification was old enough that the database still had it. ISV hull type. Human naval configuration. Destroyer class, heavily modified. She stared at it for exactly 2 seconds before she hit the combat alert. 47 ships went to station simultaneously. It was impressive in a mechanical sense. The Conclave fleet was disciplined and well-drilled, and within 90 seconds every gun array was active, every shield was fully powered, and every targeting system was pointing at the same object. 1 ship against 47. The math felt comfortable. It stopped feeling comfortable almost immediately. The human vessel broadcast on an open channel, not encrypted, not coded. Open, so every ship in the fleet could hear it. The voice was a woman's, calm in the specific way that people are calm when they have already decided what they are going to do and are not afraid of it. She said, "Veth Corridor Fleet, this is the ISV Carrion Cross. We are not going anywhere. We are not asking permission. Before you fire, check your targeting readouts. Admiral Sen, on the bridge of the Varath Sovereign, looked at his tactical officer. The tactical officer looked at his screens. He had been in the Conclave High Fleet for 19 years. He had managed combat operations against 6 different species. He had never seen anything on a targeting readout that made him feel the way his screen made him feel in that moment. Every ship in the fleet was locked. Not locked from outside, locked from inside the shields. The targeting solutions had already punched through every shield harmonic in the fleet and were sitting against the hulls, waiting. The lock signatures did not match any known weapon system. They were not missiles. They were not energy beams. They were something else, something the Conclave had no classification for, and they had been sitting inside the fleet's defenses before the combat alert even sounded. The tactical officer said very quietly, "Admiral, the targeting locks are already active. They went through the shields, I don't know how." Sen looked at the display. He had a prepared response for most situations. He had no prepared response for this. He opened the channel. "Human vessel, you are 1 ship against 47. Stand down immediately or face total destruction." The response came back in less than 3 seconds. Not the woman this time. Something flatter. Something that was clearly an automated system, not a person. "Admiral Sen, the targeting locks on your fleet have been active for 11 minutes. They were established before you left your staging position. The Varath Sovereign's shield harmonics were mapped during your port departure sequence. The same is true for all 47 vessels in your column. This information is being transmitted to your tactical display now." The tactical officer checked his screen. The timestamp on the lock data confirmed it. 11 minutes. They had been locked before the fleet even finished forming up, before they had crossed into open transit space, before they had any idea the Carrion Cross existed. Whatever these weapons were, they had been tracking the fleet silently, invisibly, without triggering a single countermeasure, for the entire approach. Sen stared at the timestamp for a long time. Ro, watching the Conclave fleet's internal communications from the Carrion Cross bridge, tracked the cascade of signals moving between ships. Confusion first. Then a spike of encrypted traffic between the flagship and 2 cruisers, which was what panic looked like in command frequency patterns. He narrated it quietly to Dara, not because she asked, but because she was the captain, and she needed to know what the fleet was doing with its hands while its mouth was still talking. 3 of their senior ships are already calculating escape vectors, he said. They're not going to run, not yet, but they're thinking about it. Dara did not change her expression. She was watching the Varath Sovereign on the forward display, a ship 5 times the size of the Carrion Cross, bristling with weapons that were currently pointed at them and doing nothing, because doing something required a certainty that the Conclave Admiral did not have anymore. Bavo came over the internal channel from the weapons bay. "Charges are hot, all 300, say the word." "Not yet," Dara said. "They might still try to fire." "They might," she said. "But look at the fleet right now. They've got 47 captains on 47 bridges, and every single one of them just found out that our weapons are already inside their shields. None of them know what we built. None of them know what it does. All they know is that we got through something that has never been gotten through before." She paused. "That's not a fleet right now. That's 47 people doing math they don't like the answer to." The channel stayed open. The Conclave fleet held position. Nobody fired. 3 kilometers away, across empty space, Admiral Sen sat at his command station with a timestamp on his screen that had broken something he had believed without question for 11 years. He had believed that what you could not find was not a threat. He had been wrong, and now the thing he had not found was inside his shields, patient and quiet, waiting to see what he decided to do about it. Counselor Fail received the emergency transmission from Admiral Sen while he was eating lunch. He read it, set down his food, and did not pick it up again. He had been a member of the Conclave High Council for 14 years. He had voted on resource allocation disputes, border treaty amendments, and military deployment orders too many times to find them interesting anymore. He had also, 3 years ago, voted against the continuation of the human exclusion decree. He was one of 4 council members who did. The other 8 had overruled them without much discussion. He had told them then that humans did not stop being dangerous because you stopped watching them. Nobody had found that argument convincing. He was looking at Sen's transmission now, which described one human ship holding an entire fleet column stationary through a weapons system nobody in the conclave had ever classified. And he thought privately that he was not going to feel good about being right. The emergency council session was convened within 40 minutes. All 12 members present, faces on screens, which was faster than physically gathering. Sen joined the session from the Varath Sovereign's communications room, his expression the carefully neutral kind that hid something uncomfortable underneath. The hardline faction spoke first. Councillor Orath, a Avari male who had authored the original exclusion decree and defended it loudly at every review, laid out the argument quickly. 1 ship against 47. Regardless of the weapon system, they could not all be destroyed simultaneously. Some ships would survive return fire. Therefore, attack. Fail waited for him to finish. The targeting locks went through the shields, Fail said. Our shields have never been penetrated. Not by any species, not in our recorded military history. Whatever this weapon does, we do not understand it. We do not know its range. We do not know if the 47 locks currently active are the only ones possible, or if the human vessel can also target the 3 fleet support stations we have positioned behind the column. He paused. We are not discussing odds we understand. We are discussing odds we are guessing at. Orath said the threat was likely a bluff. A single ship could not hold 300 targeting locks simultaneously. Fail looked at him. The timestamp on those locks says they were established before the fleet finished forming at the staging point, before the carrion cross even showed up on our sensors. That is not a bluff. That is preparation. Those are different things. Sen's voice came through the channel. He sounded tired. The human captain has not demanded our destruction. She has not made military threats. She broadcast one message, told us to check our targeting readouts, and then went silent. Whatever they want something specific. They came here to stop the fleet, not to destroy it. Orath said that allowing a human vessel to dictate conclave fleet movements would set an unacceptable precedent. Fail thought about the 3 human colonies with 40,000 people waiting on the other side of that fleet. He thought about the fact that those colonies had been quiet and compliant for 11 years, sending no military traffic, making no territorial claims, surviving on reduced power in stations that were probably in poor repair. He thought about a single ship that had been invisible for 11 years, building weapons nobody had ever seen, and choosing to use them not to attack, but to stop an attack. If we fire, Fail said, and that weapon works as the targeting data suggests, we lose ships. We might lose many. We will not know how many until we try, and we cannot untry it afterward. If we negotiate, we lose nothing except the momentum of a fleet column that was going to eliminate 40,000 non-combatants. He said the last part very deliberately. That is what this fleet was going to do, eliminate non-combatants. I want the record to be clear on that. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something has been said that everyone already knew, but nobody wanted to hear out loud. The vote was called. 7 for negotiation, 5 for force. Orath voted for force. Sen, when his vote was asked, chose negotiation without hesitation. That surprised Fail. He had expected Sen to be proud about it. Back on the carrion cross, Rowe watched the encrypted conclave command traffic shift frequency. He had a process for reading the shape of a command network even when he could not read the content. Volume, frequency distribution, the pattern of which ships were talking to which other ships. He tracked it for 12 minutes and then turned to Dara. The internal panic is dropping, he said. They're settling into a single command chain again. That's what happens after a decision gets made. Which way? Rin asked. Ro looked at the traffic one more time. They're not computing strike solutions anymore. The fleet support stations just went to reduced power. That's a de-escalation posture. He leaned back. They voted to talk. Dara said, good. Bavo's voice came over the internal channel from the weapons bay. Do I stand the charges down? No, Dara said. Leave them hot. There was a pause. Okay, Bavo said. Nobody on the Carrion Cross Bridge said anything about relief or victory or odds beaten. They were too experienced for that. The conclave had voted to talk, and that was better than the alternative, but talking was not the same as agreeing, and agreeing was not the same as keeping the agreement. They had learned a long time ago not to count things that had not happened yet. The open channel crackled, a new voice, not Sen, older, more careful. ISV Carrion Cross. This is Counselor Fail of the Conclave High Council. I am authorized to open negotiations. Please respond. Dara reached forward and opened the channel. Fail had negotiated with 7 different species in his career. He had learned that the first 30 seconds of any negotiation tells you most of what you need to know about how it is going to go. The human captain came on the channel and said, Counselor, I have 3 demands. I'll give you all 3 now. There's no sequence. There's no trade. All 3 or we're done talking. Fail noted that she did not introduce herself, did not ask how he was, and did not preface her demands with anything. He found this clarifying rather than offensive. He said, go ahead. Dara said, first, the Veth Corridor fleet stands down, breaks formation, and returns to conclave space immediately. Second, the 3 human colonies in the Veth Corridor periphery are removed from the exclusion decree and given permanent non-interference status. Third, the conclave issues a written acknowledgement that the original exclusion decree and the destruction of Earth's shipyards constituted acts of war, not enforcement actions. The first 2 Fail had expected. The third landed differently. The Council will not issue an admission of guilt, he said. That language opens us to reparations claims from every affected population group across the outer sectors. It's a legal and political problem larger than this fleet. Dara said, I know. Fail waited for the concession that usually came after I know. It did not come. Then we have a problem, he said. You had a problem before I opened this channel, Dara said. The question is whether you want the problem you have now or the problem you'll have if we stop talking. Fail thought about the 5 counselors who had voted for force. If this negotiation broke down, Oreth would call an immediate second vote, and the atmosphere would be different the second time. The way atmospheres always shifted when people felt that being reasonable had not gotten them anywhere. The 5 could become 7. 7 could become 9. He said, is there language that achieves what you want without using the specific terms your third demand requires? The channel was quiet for a moment. Fail noticed that the quiet was not hesitation. It was the silence of someone who had already thought about this and was choosing what to say next. Dara said, transmitting a file. Fail's screen populated with a document. It was not an admission of guilt. It was a factual record, a timeline cross-referenced with conclave fleet movement logs and official decree implementation orders, showing the sequence of events that led to the destruction of the Earth shipyard network. No emotional language, no accusations, just dates, locations, order numbers, and outcomes. At the bottom was a single line requesting conclave council signatures, acknowledging that the document was accurate. Not an admission, just an acknowledgement that the facts were what they were. Fail read it twice. He sent it to the council's legal advisor on a separate channel and waited 40 seconds for a response. The response was that it was technically signable without triggering the reparations framework because it did not contain causal language connecting the conclave's actions to a legal harm claim. He was about to say that he thought the council could accept this when Dara spoke again. There's a second file, Before you respond, read it. Fail opened the second file. It took him longer to read this one. It was a full operational record. 11 years of carrion cross activity in deep space, cataloged by date and location. 46 conclave logistics installations disabled, destroyed, or degraded. Automated relay stations. Supply depot nodes. Unmanned infrastructure. The record noted next to each entry whether the conclave had officially logged the loss, attributed it to equipment failure, or simply never noticed it. Most of them had never been noticed. Fail sat very still while he read. He understood, as he went through the list, that he was looking at something the conclave had genuinely not known was happening. Not because they were careless, but because the losses had been small and spread over years, and had never formed a shape that any analyst thought to look for. And yet the total effect was significant. The outer sector logistics network had been quietly degraded for over a decade. Supply response times in the Veth corridor had slowed by an average of 19%. Nobody had known why. Now he knew why. He also understood what the document was communicating that it did not say directly. The Carrion Cross had been systematically preparing for something for 11 years. It had not been surviving. It had been positioning. And it had done all of it without the conclave noticing a single action while it was happening. He sent the council a secure summary, 4 lines. The council has a gap in its intelligence picture. The size of the gap is significant. Recommend immediate acceptance of all 3 demands with the modified language for Demand 3. Recommend convening a full logistics audit within 30 days. He did not wait for discussion. He said, Carrion Cross, I'm going to recommend acceptance of your terms with the modified document language for Demand 3. The fleet will begin withdrawal within 6 hours of signing. Dara said 2 hours. A short pause. 2 hours, Fail agreed. The second vote was not close. 10-2. Even Orath voted yes, though he did not speak during the session, and his expression on the screen was the expression of a person holding a great deal of feeling at a careful distance. Sen signed first, then each of the fleet ship commanders in sequence, then Fail for the council. He looked at the signature page after it was done. 12 conclave names and 1 human name. The human name was just Dara, no rank, no title. Fail thought that said something. He was not entirely sure what. The fleet began a break formation 2 hours and 4 minutes after signing. Bavo powered the phase slip charges down one by one, running through the shutdown checklist at the kind of pace that meant he was being careful on purpose, not because he was slow. 300 individual units. The weapons bay hummed lower and lower as each one went cold. When the last one shut down, he sat on the floor of the bay with his back against the storage rack and did not move for several minutes. Wohl found him there 20 minutes later and didn't ask any questions. He just sat down next to him. That was enough. On the bridge, Rowe tracked the conclave fleet's departure. The formation broke cleanly, ships peeling off in groups of 3 and 4, FTL signatures blooming and fatting as they jumped toward conclave space. It took 90 minutes for all 47 ships to clear the corridor. He watched each jump on the sensor display and called out the count quietly, not because anyone had asked him to, but because marking them felt right. 45, he said, 46, 47. He closed the sensor display. Rin plotted the course to the first colony without being asked. She had the heading ready before Dara turned around. 12 days at their current fuel load, which was tight. Not impossible. She said so, and Dara said fine, and they started moving. 12 days of travel after 4 years of building and 11 years of hiding was nothing. The crew slept more than usual. People who had been functioning on 6 hours of fractured sleep for months found that, with no combat operations and no immediate threat to track, their bodies wanted to make up for lost time. The mess room was louder than it had been in years. Not loud exactly, just less quiet. People ate together more often. Someone dug out a card game from a personal kit. and 3 tables worth of crew spent an entire evening playing it badly and arguing about the rules. Dara wrote in the ship log for the first time in 7 months. The entry was short. It recorded the date, the outcome of the Veth corridor encounter, the terms of the signed agreement, and the current heading. Then she added one line that was not operational. She wrote, "Crew is intact, all 340 of them." Then she closed the log. Redfield Station appeared on sensors 2 hours before visual. It was smaller than Dara had expected, or maybe she had just forgotten how small a colony station looked when it wasn't surrounded by other infrastructure. 3 rings of habitation modules around a central hub, with 2 agricultural extensions added later in a different color metal, the kind of improvised expansion that happened when a settlement decided to stay even though it hadn't originally planned to. The station's hull showed 11 years of deferred maintenance, patch repairs, mismatched plating, a docking port that had been rebuilt from scratch with parts that didn't quite match the original fittings. It was still there. That was the thing. Despite everything, it was still there. The Carrion Cross dropped out of FTL in low orbit, and the station's emergency alert fired immediately. Red status. Every communication channel closed. The station went dark the way something goes dark when it is very afraid and trying not to be seen. Dara understood. They didn't know who had just arrived. They had been waiting for 11 years for something to come through that FTL point, and the last time anything with a military hull profile showed up in their sector, it had not been friendly. She nodded to Ro. He found the old Earth Naval Identification Frequency in the ship database, a channel that had not been used for active military operations in over a decade, and broadcast the Carrion Cross's identifier on it. Short, clear, just the ship designation and hull number in the old format that Earth Command had issued before the shipyards went down. Redfield Station stayed silent for 43 seconds. Then every channel opened at once. All of them. Emergency channels, civilian frequencies, the maintenance coordination band, the agricultural sync channel, everything the station had, all transmitting simultaneously, all of it human voices. Some of them crying, some of them asking questions, some of them just saying the ship's name over and over as if they needed to say it to believe it. Dara did not broadcast back right away. She let it come through, all of it. Ro had tears on his face. He was not making any effort to hide them, and Dara did not say anything about it. She asked him after a moment for the colony's current population count. He pulled it up, said the number out loud. She opened the ship log again, went to the new entry and added the number after the line about the crew being intact. Just the number, nothing around it. She closed the log. She went to the observation deck by herself. It was a small room at the back of the ship, one viewport, nothing else. Through the viewport she could see Redfield Station moving in orbit below her, its lights on fully now after whatever blackout protocols they had been running since the exclusion decree. An agricultural extension rotated slowly past. In the window of one of the habitation modules, she could see a light that was not the standard station overhead lighting. Warm. Yellow. Like a lamp someone had set in a window. Behind her, somewhere in the engineering corridor, Bava was singing. Low, quiet, something in Twi that she did not know the words to, the kind of song that people sing when they are finishing something and don't have words for what they feel. The Carrion Cross stayed in orbit. Nobody turned the cloaking drive back on.